right. A different book today. I listened to it at work a couple days ago, and it's mind blowing. Maccabees. All right, let's see. It's waiting. Uh, all right. Wow, my body's just beat. All right, the fourth book of Maccabees we're going into today. Something different. I listened to it at work yesterday, and I wanted to share it. I haven't done much from this book, so that's why I'm doing that. So the subject I'm about to discuss, as I'm about to discuss this most philosophy. Hold on. Why is it not sovereign over forgetful in the fourth book of Maccabees? The subject that philosophical. Is most philosophical. Okay, subject namely whether religious principle be perfect master of the passions. I should be advising you as well by desiring that with all readiness of your mind to give attention to philosophy. For the truth, reason is necessary to every person as a preliminary step to science, and moreover, it contains within itself the recommendation of excelling in the highest virtue. I mean, in prudence, virtue. That's a good thing. Virtue is what Jesus gave. So now, in the principle appears to have dominion over those passions which are independent to temperance, such as gluttony and sensual desire. Okay, eating too much and sexual desire, or any kind of desires. So it also appears to the Lord over those which stand in the way of justice, such as ability, depravity, and likewise over those which interfere with fortitude, mainly anger and pain and fear. Now it happens that then perhaps some may say that if the principle is superior to passions, it does not obtain the sovereignty over forgetfulness and ignorance. There is an attempt at argument is ridiculous, for principle does not prevail against those passions which belong to itself and are effects of its own nature, but against such as oppose to justice and fortitude and temperance and prudence, and even against these prevails not in such a degree as to destroy them, but only so that not to yield to or be guided by them. So anger, pain, fear, gluttony, sexual desire, sensual desire would mean that. Uh, in fact, I might prove to you by arguments from many other sources the principal absolute sovereign of the passion, but I may demonstrate with much greater effect from I can't say the word, of those persons who suffer death in defense of virtue, namely Eliezer and the 7 brothers and their mother, for these, by their contempt of suffering, even to death, have given demonstration that the principle does possess control over the passions. Okay? For their virtues, therefore, is my business to praise these men who, together with their mother, died at this junction for the sake of that which is right, for the sake of God. Like, wait till you hear how these people died, okay? And what they did. That's this. It's a banger. And for the horrors which they have honors which they have acquired, I must congratulate and think them happy, for they having obtained admiration for the fortitude and patience, not only for men in general, but even for those who had shamefully ill treated them because of the means of putting a stop to the tra- tyranny which was exercised against their nation, having conquered the tyrant by their patient endurance, so that their country was purged and cleansed by the ex, expiatory sacrifice which they offered. But I may now proceed at once to discuss the point in question, concerning by speaking generally to the argument as is our custom, and they will go on to discourse concerning these persons in particular, giving glory to all wise God. The question then, which we have to determine whether principle by complete master of the passions. We have to master our passions. Let us define, therefore, and explain what the principle and is passion. Also, how many sorts of passions there are, and whether principle extends in dominion to all of these. Principle then is intellect accompanied and guided by the sound reason, choosing and ordering all rate of life, ordering all right, a life directed by wisdom, by God. And wisdom is the knowledge of the affairs of both divine and human, and there is cause. But this is obtained by the discipline and instruction of, of the law, by which instruction we learn to receive divine matters with becoming reverence, and human affairs agreeably to their apparent utility. Now, of wisdom, there are four species: prudence, justice, fortitude, and temperance. And the most influential of the is prudence, by the mean which indeed principle obtains the mastery, which is exercised over the passion. Of the passions, or affliction, or affections, the two most comprehensive are pleasure and pain, and each of these affect both body and mind. Pleasure affects both body and mind. People don't like it. Already leaving. If that's the case, I'm just going to jump off. So, the mind, there also numerous affections which follow these leading passions of pleasures and pain. Before pleasure goes desire. So when we desire for pleasure, right? And after pleasure comes joy, but pain is fear, and after pain comes sorrow. So after we do these things like pleasure ourselves, pleasure comes joy. You're enjoying while you're doing it, but before pain is fear, and after pain comes sorrow. Anger isn't a affection. Anger is an affection. Which partakes both of pleasure and pain, as will be perceived if only one carefully observes it whenever it comes upon him. So, pleasure, there, when that comes upon you, you must have a way out of it, right? So, there exists also pleasure, a malignant evil, which is the most various and versatile of all the affections. Pleasure, a malignant evil, which is most various and versatile of all the affections. In the mind, it exhibits itself under the form of arrogance and avarice, love, vainglory, love of vainglory. So giving glory to yourself, we give glory to the Most High. Love of quarreling, want to good faith, and envy. And in the body, it is greediness and gluttony and selfish enjoyment. As therefore are two direct main shoots of the body, mind, namely pleasure and pain, so are there many side shoots springing up from these affections, each of which shoots principal to the universal husbandman, pruning on every side. Who's the universal husbandman? Pruning, cutting off on every side, pruning the bad stuff out of us. Vainglory, pleasure, anger, pruning on every side and scraping off and tying up and watering and changing about in every way cultivates and improves the materials both of the morals and affections. For principle truly is the leader of virtues, but of the passions it is a monarch. Observe now, first of all, for those acts which are obstructive to temperance, how completely principle is a ruler over passions. For instates temperance is the conquering of our desires, of our, as it said in the other book, conquering of our addictions, desires. Desires are addictions. So we must overcome them. Smoking marijuana, eating too much food, gluttony, pointing always to ourself, self-glorifying. Of the desires, some have reference to the mind and some to the body. Sensual sensual lust, some to the mind and some to the body. Over both of these principles appears to bear sway. For what causes is it that when we urge on a forbidden kinds of food, desires, your addiction to certain kinds of food, we turn away from the pleasures which these are calculated to afford. It is not the principle is able to restrain and rule these appetites, such at the least, is my opinion, and therefore, when we long for fishes and fowls and four-footed animals and every kind of food which is forbidden to us by the law, it is through the mastery of principle that we abstain from them. Now, what do you do when everything's bad? It starts getting good, okay? For the affections of our appetites are restrained and turned into another direction by sobriety of mind, and to all the movements of the body are kept in check by principle. And we are to wonder of all this, if even I desire of the soul are disappointed when brought into completion with the pursuit of which is honorable and right. Yet on this ground, the self controlling Joseph is extolled that through the principle which ruled in his mind, he overcame the temptation. So he overcame the temptation to sensual indulgence, which is sexual, right? For being youthful and full ripened for sexual intercourse. Quilled the true principle, the impetuous order of his passions. Not only the principle seemed to vanquish the of, of sensual indulgence, the stimulus of sensual indulgence, but also that of the desire of every kind. So this is the lusts of our flesh. Pleasure causes pain, after all, and anger. So if you're pleasuring yourself, so let's say smoking marijuana, right, or sexual. So, for instance, of the law says, through thou shalt not convey thy neighbor's wife, covet thy neighbor's wife, or anything which is the neighbor. And now, since the law has enjoined us to covenant, I may the more easily persuade you that principle is able to overcome this desire, even as it masters those passions which are preventive of justice. For how is a man reclaimed who thought permiss, permo, pars, parsimony habitually lives by himself, and it is a glutton and a drunkard, unless to be evident that the principle is Lord over all passions. But as soon as any man regulates his life by the law, although he be a miser, he does violence to own disposition, lending money without interest to those who are in need, and forfeiting the money lent when the weeks of okay, so the Bible talks about that, lending money without interest to those who are in need, and forfeiting the money lent in the weeks of the sabbatical year come on, and through a man be naturally promiscuous, naturally our body, he becomes obedient to the law through the principle, neither gathering up the last ears of his harvest, nor gleaning the remnant of his vineyard. And in other points of the conduct, it is easy to see that it is principle which conquers his passions. So reasoning in the mind, well, that's going to get me in trouble. So let's not do it. The principle in our minds. For the law prevails even for the affection towards parents, not surrendering the cause of virtue, even on their account. It has also prevailed to over conjugal affections, condemning it whenever it seems contrary to the law. So it controls likewise the affection of parents towards their children, pushing them for any vice. And it is master intercourse, over the intercourse between friends, reproving them for any evil doings. Okay? Reproving them for any evil doings. Okay? That's why that we have the word of God. We need to reprove our friends because we care and love for them and want them to make it. And it'd be rather better that we reprove them before God does. So, and do not think this is incredible when principle is able to overcome even enmity by means of the law, not permitting us to cut down the fruit trees belonging to the enemies. But, see, it's not going anywhere. You know what? Nobody's here, so I think I'm just going to jump off and take a break for today. People don't seem to be. It's going to get good. Serving their I'm not going to. I'm going to keep going for it. Serving their property with those who were destroying it and helping to build up again the things which had fallen. Okay? And even over the more violent passions, principle appears to bear rule, namely the love of empire and vainglory and boasting and uh ostensual uh ostentation and envy, sorry, some words I got. For all malignant passions a sober mind subdues and repels, as likewise it behaves towards anger, for even this is its matters. For example, Moses, when he enraged with Dathan and Abraham, Abraham did nothing against them in anger, but disciplined his mind under principle. Because anger and sin not. So what he did is he was going to go angry, and then he thought, well, what's that going to get me? So, for then sober minded, as I observe, is able to prevail against the passions, and some of them it can change, and others utterly annual. For on what other grounds does the most wise father Jacob reprove Simeon and Levi for having slain the whole tribe of the Shitchenites, contrary to the good principle, saying, "Cursed be their anger, for if principle had not possessed by the power of subduing anger, he would not have spoken this. For when God formed man, he planted around him a variety of both of passions and of moral feelings." And we don't run off of feelings. So if it's something that you're feeling, you might want to look at it, because feelings can cause a lot of trouble. And thereover, he set the intellectual mind as on a throne for the holy director by means of the internal 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 sensuous, and his mind he imparted the law, by which if it guide itself, it will continue to support an empire sober and just, various and brave. How then happens it any one may say that if principle subdues the passion, it does not obtain the mastery over forgetfulness and ignorance, but for the reasoning perfectly ridiculous, for principle does not appear to have dominion over the passions which are connected with itself, but over those which belong to the body. For the instance of any one of you may not be able wholly to eradicate desire, but nevertheless your principle is able to effect so much as this, that you are not enslaved by desire. Any one of us may not be able to root quite out of his mind anger, be able to root quite out his mind anger, but still he may be able to, by means of reasoning with yourself. Well, what does anger lead me to? To lend aid towards subduing his anger. Because, anger isn't part of God, it's a feeling. We don't run off of feelings, okay? Running off of feelings, what this is all saying is running off of feelings can get you in trouble. So, any one of you may not be able to eradicate a vicious propensity, but principle is able to assist him, so that he shall not be bowed down by this propensity. For principle is not an eradicator of passion, but their antagonist and opponent. And this is why they may institute more forcibly by the thirst of the King David. For when David had been enraged with the Philistines during the whole day, and had slain many of them in company, well, people don't like it. But this gets really good, man. Anyways, with the soldiers of his nation, when evening was come, perspiring the greatly fatigued, he came to the royal tent, around which the whole body of his chief mighty men had encamped. All the rest of them employed themselves about their supper, but the king, being exceedingly thirsty, through he had a hand abundance of water from the fountain, could not usage of this thirst with this, but a certain unaccountable longing for water, which was in the enemy's camp, increasing, tortured him, and relaxing, consumed him. Okay, so that happens with me with lust. like sexual lust, I have to turn to the Word of God by reasoning. Well, what's that going to cause? Well, I don't like to sin. I hate sin. And what comes after it, after I pursue my lust, is pain, suffering, and then anger starts coming in. So, whenever his guards were concerned at this longing of the king, two brave young soldiers, feeling respect for this desire, armed themselves and taking an urn passed over the enemy's ramparts, and having escaped the notice of those who watched the gates, they passed through the whole camp of the enemy in search of it. And having discovered the fountain by their valor, they brought from it a draught for the king. But he thought, he though parched up with thirst, he was really thirsty. So it's like saying, the sexual lust that I have, I've always been used to, when it comes, just running to it. And I couldn't stop even thinking about it when I first came in. That was the hardest thing. So reasoning with your mind, okay? We need to reason with our mind for these things. So considered how great danger it would be for his soul to drink the water. So how much great danger it would be for my soul, because sexual lust affects the soul. So number one is it puts darkness back into you. These things, right? By feelings, by running by feelings can hurt the soul and the body, which must be reckoned equal to so much blood. Wherefore, placing his principle in opposition to his desire. The principle of the law is not to fornicate. So yesterday morning at work, that was running through my mind. So what I did is I put my headphones on. I overcame it with the word, with this one, actually. For he poured out the cup of an offering to God, for the sober mind is able to overcome the pressure of passion and to extinguish the flames of lust. There we go. Now, lusts are things you're addicted to. We must overcome lusts. Marijuana, smoking cigarettes, drinking alcohol, eating foods that we're not supposed to, overindulging, anger, sexual lust. We are to extinguish the flames of lust and to vanquish bodily pains. However, and I get it. I get it if I don't. I get bodily pains. Why does that happen? Because that can trigger you. Well, even it triggered me with sexual lust because it hurt down there, and I would go and say, well, that will relieve the pain. No, it'll hurt the soul, and it does relieve the pain, but I'd rather have the pain than do my sexual lust, right? However, excessive and by honorable uprightness of the principle to reject with scorn unassumed dominion of passions. But on the occasion now invites us to demonstrate proof from the history of this theory of sober principle. So to think sober in the mind, you're going to have to fight many things. And you're going to have to overcome them here. So that they don't go here, because they affect your soul. These affect your soul, man. But occasion to invite the demonstrates the proof of the history theory of the sober principle. For when our fathers were enjoying complete peace through their strict observance of the law, okay, of God's law, okay, I always think about God's laws. So, and we're prospering. There you go. So I know Jesus died for a lot of things, but isn't God's law still there? I believe it is. So I believe at first, so that even the king of Assyria, Seleucus Nicar, both assigned them to money for the service of the temple and approved and permitted their constitution and form of government. The certain person attempted inviolations against a general, unnamely, humanity, fell into calamities in various ways. Generally, humanity of sentiment fell into calamities in very many ways. So, for a certain man named Simon, who had opposed in politics of Oninius, he holding the high priesthood for his life, an upright and honorable man, after that by every kind of accusation throughout to the hurt of his nation, he could do him no harm, fled away with a design of betraying his country to the enemy, wherefore when he was come to Apollonius, the military government of Syria, and Phoenice and Cilicia, he said, being well affected towards, yeah. Bye, guys.